lot with social justice as it pertains to the black community, but I've never been African American. Do you know the compassion and the understanding? Number one, it's through the Holy Spirit. I can't even tell you how I've been able to be effective in different ways, except for one thing. It's by the Holy Spirit giving me discernment and giving me insight, and not just that, but living alongside of them, loving alongside of them, serving and suffering alongside of them. And I'll never know, unless I give myself to addiction, what it means to be an addict. But I can at least have compassion because I've inundated myself in that community to understand where their struggles are at, to understand where they're coming from and the way they think and where they don't think. And for the black community to understand the struggle that they've gone through to be in the place they're at right now, and even the current struggles that go along with that. I'll never understand that because I was born the way I was born. But I can stand behind them and lift them up. And I can stand behind them and push those situations forward. I can stand behind them and I can lift them up in prayer. And I can move them forward to the fullness that God has for them. You see, I don't need to know everything. I don't need to go through everything. I just need to be willing to have that compassion, to be acquainted with that passion. You see, what we need to remember is that God went through all of this for us. And he can input that into us, input that into our lives, input that into our hearts to be servants. It says in his word in Hebrews chapter 4, verse 15, "For we do not have a high priest who is unable to sympathize with our weakness, but one who is in every respect has been tempted as we are, yet without sin." You know what the number one thing that gets people? Nobody knows what I'm going through. Well, number one, there's always somebody that knows what you're going through. But irregardless of the people here on earth, Christ always knows what you're going through. Because when Christ was here living on this earth, remember, he emptied himself. He came in the form of a human. He's not a God that was far away just watching the show and just knowing what was going on. He said, no, I'm going to put aside my authority. I'm going to put aside my position. I'm going to put aside my power, and I'm going to come in human form so I can feel everything that you feel, so I can face everything that you faced. And he came to this earth and he laughed. And then he cried. And then he was excited and he had victory and then he had pain. And then he was betrayed and then he was encouraged and he was part of a team and then he was kicked out, wasn't he? And he went through all these different things in his life so that he could understand what we go through. Did you know that Jesus probably got sick? Did you know that Jesus faced temptation? Well, not Jesus. You see, there's an exception there. He didn't sin. But understand, when you're facing the temptation of the sins in your life, and when the enemy comes at you, that you have somebody that knows what you went through and knows how to get through it. And I don't know about you, but I don't want to follow somebody that doesn't know where they're going. But I know that Christ knows where he's going. But in the same manner, we get into that place. And remember, we get into that place of prayer, and we're changed into his image. Into his same image, from glory to glory, even but by what? The Spirit of God is changing us and giving us insight and giving us discernment. And as we live amongst those people, we begin to understand, we begin to have compassion. Do we cry when somebody else is hurting, even though it doesn't affect us? Are we willing to celebrate somebody else's victories? Isn't it funny how sometimes we can't even allow ourselves to celebrate somebody else's victories because of the selfishness and the jealousy that's going on inside? Or to be able to feel the hurt of somebody else because we're just glad we're not in the same position? And so we make it about ourselves. But Jesus was willing to become familiar with the needs of others so that he might experience the compassion. If we are going to be true servants, then it will be necessary to step outside of ourselves, our desires, and our comfort zones in order to immerse ourselves into someone else's life, situation, community, or culture. Only then will true compassion